Hey, great bookers. So, today's lesson will be about effective argumentation in a body paragraph. Here are some of the questions we'll be exploring. How do you craft a specific, compelling, and debatable topic sentence? How do you use evidence in a deft and efficient fashion? How do you critically analyze evidence to develop your ideas with nuance and thoroughness? While you may not be hearing anything necessarily new today, I'm sure, in fact, that your previous English teachers have covered these kinds of questions. Look at this lesson as an important refresher in skills that are central to your success in this course as a critical thinker and an analytical writer. Okay, so let's get right to it by looking at 3 body paragraphs. The first 2 could be stronger in terms of analysis, but the last one hits the nail on the proverbial head. Here's the first paragraph on your summer reading, Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. Go ahead and pause here to read it. When you're done reading, click play. Let's start by taking a look at the topic sentence. When people don't have good memories, they not only feel that their lives are inadequate and full of sorrow, but they also won't die at ease. Now, you'll remember that a topic sentence governs a body paragraph. As such, it should never be a plot fact. That just leads to plot summary. Instead, a topic sentence should articulate a bold idea, a thematic aspect of the text that is a subset of the thesis. Now, the writer has a right impulse in attempting a debatable assertion. He's not guilty of the cardinal sin of using a plot fact for a topic sentence. But we can see that the topic sentence is overly generic. The writer is talking about people in general, rather than the book's characters in particular. And similarly, the idea expressed is also overly general. Be sure to avoid these sorts of sweeping generalizations. Moving on to the first piece of evidence. Now, as you'll recall, in any body paragraph, you want to get to your first piece of evidence by your second or third sentence. Otherwise, you'll likely lapse into generalizations and plot summary. In this case, the writer commendably gets the text quickly. That said, the quote is overly lengthy. Consequently, the reader gets sidetracked by the excessive use of text. Moreover, the quote brings up a new topic, that is, drugs and pain, that doesn't quite reflect the topic sentence. Now, I'm sure you've heard this before. When you quote, integrate small bits of text, not large swaths of it. But if you do use a lengthy quote like this one, you need to set it off in a block quote. Even more importantly, when you quote at length, what you're signaling to the reader is that you'll analyze the evidence carefully, with attentiveness to detail. That's not what happens here. Take a look at the analysis. The writer asserts, the donor doesn't have any good memories that would allow him to come to terms with his life. He feels that he needs to have someone else's memories to die in harmony with his life, and those are Kathy's. We can see that the writer is simply paraphrasing, not analyzing the evidence. Don't just repeat what the text is saying. Be sure to critically assess your evidence carefully with attentiveness to detail. The next piece of evidence isn't so lengthy, but we can again see that the analysis could be stronger. The writer asserts, this moment allows Kathy to truly see that even though she thought she had some bad things, the good things that she had in her life were much better than the other clones. This reassures Kathy that Hailsham is a good place, and a place full of happy memories, allowing her to think about her life in harmony. This time it's the diction that's weak. The writer is relying on vague terms like good things and bad things, assertions that don't really get us into a more nuanced and insightful understanding of either character or theme. We're not really seeing any in-depth thinking, so we're not really learning anything new about the text. The next paragraph is also on Never Let Me Go. Again, pause here to read the paragraph, then play when you're done. Let's take a look at that topic sentence. The restrictive setting causes students to form collections of their possessions, which show not only what they have, but who they are. Now, this topic sentence, you could argue, is slightly better than the last one. It makes, after all, a potentially intriguing connection between personal possessions and identity, and how Hailsham's restrictive setting engenders this connection. But it's still too vague. In its lack of specificity, it doesn't connect to one of the novel's themes to the extent that it might. Maybe saying something like, even the personal collections that the students treasure reveal another aspect of their desperation, would reflect a larger thematic idea in more specificity. Moving forward, as we make our way through the paragraph, there are a few lapses in argumentation. For instance, let's take a look at part of the analysis of the first piece of evidence. The writer asserts, every piece possessed a story, and every piece becomes a piece of oneself. While it might be true that every item possesses a story and every piece becomes a piece of oneself, this observation is overly broad in content. We again see a sweeping generalization. The writer needs a specific example to fully illustrate this idea. Looking at the analysis of the second piece of evidence, the writer asserts, and just as her personality changes, what she sees as essential for her collection changes. The collection is a piece of her character. The writer is again being overly broad, relying on the generalization that Ruth's personality changes, but not specifying how. As well, the claim that the collection was a piece of her character doesn't get specific enough. What piece of her character is being referred to? Her childhood innocence? Her young adult years? Some other part of her personality? Again, we don't know because the writer is relying on overly generic claims. Finally, recall the topic sentence. It isn't just about the connection between possessions and identity, but about the influence of the restrictive setting. Unfortunately, at no point in this paragraph does the writer discuss this influence in any real depth. Instead, he limits his analysis by commenting only on the connection between identity and possession. In other words, only part of the topic sentence is developed. Finally, let's move on to a nuanced and effective body paragraph. This one on Flannery O'Connor's Wise Blood, a dark satire about the cynical exploitation of religion. I've chosen a paragraph on a book you probably haven't read so as to illustrate that strong argumentation speaks for itself. You can recognize it even if you're not familiar with the subject matter. Once again, pause to read the paragraph, then play when you're ready. First of all, note the topic sentence. In contrast with Hazel's religion, Ani J. Holy's for-profit brand of Christianity is a shallow manipulation of spiritually blind masses. This topic sentence is clear and cogent in its focus. The writer isn't relying on vague generalizations. Instead, she's articulating a bold, specific idea. We get to the first piece of evidence efficiently by the second sentence of the paragraph, and that's followed by a thorough analysis of the evidence. The writer asserts, the juxtaposition of the roles projected onto Holy, preacher, cowboy, and mortician, are humorous because of their stark contrast. As a preacher, he's more inclined toward cowboy-style braggadocio and showmanship than actual enlightenment or humility. Moreover, his association with mortician links him with spiritual death and decay, the result of a culture that idolizes false preachers. Under his smile and under his convincingly holy persona, even his pseudonym Holy being itself a mask for his true identity, his honesty is as artificial and easy to remove as dentures. Notice the attentiveness to detail, the way that the writer pinpoints the significance of the humorous contrast between the characterizations of Ani J. Holy. From there, she moves on to unpacking the connotations of the language, assessing the thematic significance of mortician and under his smile. The next piece of evidence is assessed just as carefully. The writer asserts, his folksy dialect and his saturation of his sermons with the words folks and you people is just as fake as his reasons for starting his religion. His only goal is to gain money, and his congregation is too complacent to challenge his hypocrisy. implicit in his prioritization of profit over spiritual fulfillment, is O'Connor's criticism of a world where material gains matter more than spiritual ones. Once again, the writer hones in on the quote's particulars, analyzing, not paraphrasing, the text, in the process fully extending her thinking about the thematic implications of the character's hypocritical showmanship. Notice that both pieces of evidence and their corresponding analysis develop the topic sentence. At no point does the writer lose sight of her focus. Finally, capping things off, we have the last sentence. By involving the human ego in religion and turning Christianity into a business, people like Holy undermine the meaning of belief itself. This concluding sentence both reflects the topic sentence while providing cogent closure for the paragraph. In short, there are no gaps in the argumentation, no fillers, no excessive words. Rather, each sentence feeds off the previous one to develop the argument through engagingly astute analysis. Okay, so there you have it. To summarize what we've covered, topic sentences should be debatable, specific, and insightful. Evidence should be integrated efficiently and smoothly, and most importantly, analyzed thoroughly and astutely. And concluding sentences should wrap things up on a cogently assertive note. I hope that this refresher helps you with your own argumentation and analysis as you begin outlining and developing your ideas. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with.